all of the provisions to get Rochambeau and his people back to France safely. He even gave them weapons in which to make it back home safely with. And the first thing those crackers did when they got off the shore far enough is to turn the guns on Haiti and open fire on the people who had just given them their lives.
Wow.
You know? And so when you understand that that was the level of mentality and the lack of humanity we were fighting against, those people, they weren't being lynched. Those were criminals being hung. And there's a difference between lynching someone and hanging a criminal.
Talk to us about that aspect of the film and your contribution to it.
Well, what I see is you know they were speaking the language that they were spoken to, and they were dealing with the issue the very best way that they possibly could, as it relates to what they were being put through. And at some point in time, they became one of the greatest fears of Europe. For what they would set the tone for the rest. And what's so important is how we all were impacted by each other. Africans throughout this hemisphere, throughout the world, were impacted by what each of us did. So whether you're looking at what happened in Haiti that would impact Nat Turner then would impact other things going on. You have an interrelationship that's still going on to this very day, and that's the other piece that's important about this film, is that it puts front and center what happens, what do people do when they are tired of oppression. And that's very important, because here we are in 2017 having to take a knee for something that we could handle this situation if we wanted to.
Yes.
You know, and what we have to do is look at this from a very clear analytical perspective. I believe taking a knee is being very nice about it.
Absolutely.
You know, they better be happy we're only taking a knee and stop trying to get us to stand up. So that this story is a very clear continuation of the Hidden Colors series. Yes. From the very beginning, that exposed the history of African people that so many of us don't know, to the role of melanin as it relates to African people, to looking at the rules of racism, then to look at the religion of white supremacy, and then to look at a culmination of what you do in face of the rules of racism, in the face of the religion of white supremacy, when you know the power of melanin and you know your history. So that what has happened in a sequential way, which I think is important when we talk about episodic history and holistic history, is that so far every one of the Hidden Colors films, from 1 to 4, has prepared us for this one.
Yes. I agree with that. I agree with that.
This is action.
And one of the beautiful things, till this day, Dessalines have been hated and rejected around the world. And even in Haiti, in terms of the government, the people love him. And I'm going to tell you about a beautiful thing that just happened in Haiti last week. But first, let me just take you back to his cliche, couper tête, brûler caille, to cut off their heads and burn their houses. That term, couper tête, brûler caille, he's making a reference to the fact that he told all of the Frenchmen, get on the ship I provided for you, go home. And he says, you can't stay with us because the bloodletting you did, the crime you committed, the harm you brought won't allow us to live with you in peace. But we're going to let those of you go home. If you do not go home, we will kill you. But he wasn't killing white people in general. He told the white Polish people, you Poles, you fought with us. You are brothers, you are sisters. Stay here, raise your family. He told the Italians who fought with us, you stay here and raise your family. You're black now. And he used that very word. He told them, you're black now. You're one of us. But the French, the crime you have committed is unforgiving. We can't in good conscience live in the same space with you, given that crime. So we're going to give you the opportunity to go home to your people. And I told you what they did. Those who did get on the ships turned their guns on Haiti and opened fire. But most people don't know the story of Rochambeau. About 2 weeks later, he ran into a British ship, got into some kind of conflict, and ended up spending 8 years in a penitentiary in Britain. So God blessed him really well. But the other thing we don't know about Rochambeau, he fought beside George Washington. That same Rochambeau. You know, they tell us about the Marquis de Lafayette, but they don't tell us about Rochambeau. You know, they even name a street in the Bronx after him, up in the 200s. So there was a relationship there between the French and the American government, even as it came to Haiti, you know. And so when we study the response of the African people from going into the alligator swamp, and we too often put everything on the brother. Bookman, yes, was an extraordinary brother, an extraordinary leader, but you had some sisters there who was bad too. You know, you had, what's the sister name? Baba Fatima, Cecilia Fatima, who was one of the Mambos, or voodoo priestess, who was also a leader in that community. She was the one, I understand, who brought Bookman to the leadership, because the sisters always ordained the brothers to leadership. That's not something we just do in the churches today. That was part of African culture. And there was other sisters who fought in the military as officers beside these brothers, because they knew they were fighting for a nation. And when they wrote their constitution, they made it very clear, any African, any enslaved person who make it to these shores, you're free. And we will defend that freedom. And that frightened the rest of this hemisphere in their slavery. Because he's saying, this is a sanctuary. Make it here, and we will defend you with our nation. And then send troops to South America, to a number of nations, to Bolivia and other places, to help to fight, to free them. Most people don't know that Haiti sent troops to other nations in the hemisphere to help get rid of slavery and bring them to freedom. So this story of the African people of Haiti, or do they know that they were Africans who left here and went to Haiti and fought in that revolution? Because it was the place of exile. Or even to get past the revolution, when they asked, what's our brother name in Virginia, Nat Turner, who was his leader, he says Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Now Dessalines had been dead and buried. So the judge said, well, go find this Dessalines. When they came back, they said that was the emperor of Haiti, but he's dead. So they asked our brother again, who is your leader? And he told them, my leader is Jean-Jacques Dessalines. He's talking about the spirit of the Haitian Revolution being part of the impetus for the Turner rebellions.
Wow. Wow.
So this is an important document, and like Baba Booker just said, it is the culmination of all of the other Hidden Color series. It led to telling this story the best we could, so our people can see. When you take into account all of those other episodes, it leads to this type of epic for a people who've been oppressed. You know.
Absolutely, this is absolutely historic, and I stand corrected. I apologize. I'm sure I got his name wrong. It's Tariq Nasheed. So I wanted to make sure, because I don't want Tariq on, because when Tariq get upset, he get upset.
Yes, he.
Love you, Tariq. Don't hurt me, brother. Don't hurt me. I got your name right. I want to get your name right. Professor Kaba, talk to us about the aspect of this film, and you're right. I came to know. I'm sure that unfortunately, I came to know both of you from Hidden Colors. Talk to us about. I know you both of you have been in this industry for 30, 40, 50 years. As our elder Professor Small. This film series, this documentary series, in my opinion, has changed the game. It has created an entirely new resurgence and awareness of Black heritage, African heritage, and has given us levels of truth that we never knew, but it also confirmed many ideas that we had, but we didn't have confirmation on. Walk us through some of your processes in all, because you've been in all of the Hidden Colors series. Walk us through some of what you learned about the power of being a part of this documentary series.
What I learned as I saw it develop was when Brother Nasheed and I were first talking, and as we've walked through these series since December of 2010 was when I first became a physical part of the Hidden Colors. They contacted me in like the spring of 2010. But one of the most important things I think is that Tariq Nasheed, Ola, and the staff and crew of Flex Entertainment and those that bring forward this series, what he was able to do was to tap into the story and to tap into the means by which it could be communicated. Because as many who have watched Hidden Colors 1, who have gone to, here in New York, the First World Alliance series, the Saturday workshops that existed for years with Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark. You could go through the list. Professor Smalls. Everybody was speaking at these workshops that were for maybe 10 to 15 per term, fall and winter. But what Hidden Colors did, it came at a most opportune time. Almost you could call it an anointed time, an appointed time. And what he used, the vehicle that he used as it related to the visual, and the way in which Tariq Nasheed and his staff promoted it and marketed it, brought it to, and the name of it, because I remember in Hidden Colors 1, in the movie house where it showed, I stepped outside because at the end of the theater was very small, and I saw that there might be a crowd, so I stepped outside, and a lot of young people were there, and a lot of young people came up to me and said, yo, I didn't know the Hidden Colors was going to be like this. I mean, I saw it on World Star Hip Hop. I thought it was going to be Nicki Minaj, and I thought it was going to be, Drake, and so they came, some came without an understanding of what actually Hidden Colors was. Although they had a sense of the pieces of it, they still fundamentally thought, seeing it on World Star Hip Hop, seeing it as like Hidden Colors, they thought it was going to be something that was more to their generation as it relates to hip hop and rap. And what I came to realize is that what this film actually did was that it opened up an area that is in all of our minds, particularly our young people, and they wanted more. They said, well, direct me to a book or to another movie, or how can I get more? And what I decided to do was to put the study guide that I have in place, to collect my work and put it in an outline form, because of the nature of the fact that we opened up a lot of our people, but we did not satisfy what that opening up did for them. So that the idea from my perspective, when I was contacted for Hidden Colors 2, and they said it was going to be on melanin, the power of melanin, I said, okay, that sounds good to me. We can work this out.
That's one of my specialties.
and that opened up more people to come.
Sure.
And the story came out, and so Hidden Colors became a central point. But what's important to understand is that this story from Tariq is things that he had been watching for years when YouTube exploded in the 90s. And so as he began to assemble the people he wanted to be in Hidden Colors, all of these individuals were people that he had been watching on YouTube doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, coming up out of the different workshop series from California, Chicago, Detroit, Louisiana, New York, Connecticut. Nothing was new, but the way in which it was packaged was fundamental to the times that we were living in. And this is what leads us to the spiritualness of the Haitian Revolution, the role that spirituality played. because I believe that all of this is happening the same way that this is happening. It's happening for an anointed or an appointed people. This is time now. This is the time. You know, remember the time. And what's happening now is that out of this, you have people who are doing rap, who are in the hip-hop community, who are now attaching themselves to different things that they've been impacted by Hidden Colors, but not just Hidden Colors, the other types of films that are coming out that have been impacted by Hidden Colors, such as Out of Darkness. That is impact. So it's like when you are going to...
As well as Professor Small, Happy the film by brother Taki Grant. Yeah,
absolutely. All of this is just... It's like when you're going to start a fireplace, you light the log that's closest to you. And then that log lights the next log, and the second to the third to the fourth. Pretty soon you have a roaring fireplace, but you only lit one log. And so Hidden Colors has been something that has taken all that has happened before. And just like we look and we speak of Dessalines, when we think of the Haitian Revolution, for most people, they think of Toussaint Louverture. But the thing is that you had Boukman, and then you had Sister Fatima, and then you had a Sister Defile and Desafis. These sisters were warriors out here. Just as our sisters are warriors today. They're doing the same exact thing. And there's a connection that was very important to be made, because now we have another name that we're listening to, Dessalines. Okay, but folk don't understand the impact that Dessalines had, or Padre Jean, before all of that even occurred. So there's a continuity of history, and this is why Dr. Wade Noble's book, Island of Memes, and Jacob Carruthers' book, Irritated Genie, and CRL James's book, CLR James's book, The Black Jacobins, all of these books lead to the reading of this. And I remember in Detroit when Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Jeffries, and Professor James Smalls presented at the Charles
A. Wright Museum.
Charles A. Wright Museum in Detroit, where they developed this concept of memes and the island of memes and the stories that come up out of this. We have to understand our history and the connection that we all have to this. Just as Professor Smalls talks about the relationship of Nat Turner to someone like Dessalines, it's important that we understand this history, because it's our history. It's a collective history. So wherever we find ourselves as a people, the African spirit is in our DNA.
Absolutely. Excellent. Professor Smalls, the impact that Hidden Colors has had on you, I remember distinctly one of the, and I don't know if it was Hidden Colors 1 or Hidden Colors 2, it might have been number 2, where you said, you can put any religion in front of me and I can teach and I can show you and trace it back to Africa. Every single religion that ever existed, I can trace right back to Africa. Talk to us about, and in Haiti, voodoo was is something that unfortunately here is taboo and scares us because we're so disconnected from our heritage and culture. Walk us through, if you could, our connection and association with that spiritual practice, particularly in Haiti.
Right. We missed a very beautiful brother, but you got to mention his name, Max Beauvoir, who passed about 2 years ago, and he was the chief Hogan of voodoo in Haiti. He was also a scientist, an extraordinary scientist. But the whole concept of African spiritual systems is about understanding the fundamentals and the laws of nature, and understanding the fundamental relationship between the universe, cosmology, nature, and ourselves. That's what voodoo is about. That's what all African theology is about. You then have to create social commentary and metaphor and allegories to explain those scientific concepts, principles, and ideas that impact your life every day, and you want to learn to implement into your social ecology so that you begin to align up with the perfection of nature in terms of order, you know? And so when we think of the Loas, or what they call the deities in Haiti, we don't have a word for deity in our language. Or we think of the Orishas in the Yoruba, or the Abosum in the Akan, or the Netches in the Kemetic system. You're talking about forces of nature, powers in nature, but also forces and powers in the human being. These are quality and attributes that we can develop in ourselves, we can develop in our family, we can develop in our community. And if we develop them along the lines of understanding that our ancestors discerned from nature, we can recreate nature in its social construct as a way of life, or cultural construct as a way of life. And at the center of this, the piece that we call our spiritual system, like Voodoo and Yoruba, this is where the most educated, because we use the word priest today, but there's no word as priest in our language. These people were the teachers and the scientists. These are the people we call the professors today, the PhD people and the doctorate people and so forth. That's who we call in ancient time priests. You understand? They knew the basic science. They knew the essential science. They had mastered the science of nature, and then they applied it to our understanding on how to live our life in an optimal fashion, and how to build relationship that was based on the harmony that we talk about when we talk about Ma'at. That's what voodoo is about. And if you want to really get technical, you know, we can just look at something as simple as says, okay, and I was just telling some brothers about that. If you're a human being, why are you eating carrots and potatoes and beef and fish and chicken to renew the dead cells in your human body? You're eating it because you're all of nature. And you use nature to replenish yourself. So what our ancestors is doing is trying to explain with the things we call religion, the relationships between every element of the human with every element of nature. And then how you create the artificial environment, the social environment, following those same rules so that you have harmony, balance, and peace among yourselves. You see? So
fantastic.
That's the easiest way for me to explain it without it getting religiously complex. You know, because when you come up with rituals, ritual is a teaching tool. Symbols are teaching tools that convey ideas from one mind to the other mind and carry out the intergenerational transmission of the body of wisdom that the ancestors have discerned. But you have to take that body of wisdom of the ancestors and you have to learn new wisdom and new understanding from nature. Because the things we implemented in Nigeria 1,000 years ago, we may have to discard some of those methodologies and come up with new methodologies. How do we implement those ideas in this new social, political, and economic ecology we now find ourselves? And what voodoo did, voodoo was able to transform the traditional indigenous African understanding of relationships and create a new way of implementing it in their world. And defeating the French, British, Americans, and Spanish showed the power of the reinterpretation and the reapplication of an African philosophical and spiritual system to your new ecology.
Excellent. Professor Cobham, can you chime in on that? You are, of course, getting ready to release some seminal work called Spirituality Before Religions, and talk to us about the spiritual nature and aspect of Haiti as it relates to voodoo and what Professor Smalls was just sharing with us.
To look at the beauty of what Professor Smalls is talking about, it's called syncretism. Because when you talk, because we've spoken before, and one of the things that I always say that it is not the strongest that survive, and it's not the survival of the fittest. It's the ones who can adapt to the new way, holding on to universal principles that have always existed, such as Ma'at. And so what our African ancestors did, who were captured and kidnapped and taken against their will to a particular part of the world that they did not know, what they did is they held on to their Africanness, their view of nature, but because of Christianity being superimposed on them, what they did was they took concepts of this so-called European religion. We could trace it back, but we're going to leave that for now. But what they did is that they were able to practice their Africanness masked in what the European thought was their practice of Catholicism. For those that were taken from the Spanish languages, they did the same thing, but that faith system is called Santeria, with a combination of another indigenous concept is called Espiritismo. They were able to mask Santa Barbara in Catholicism with one of the Africanness of themselves. In Brazil, the Africans did it with candomblé. The English-speaking Caribbean did it with obia, and we in America, whether we realize it or not, did it in the Baptist church.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's important that as African people, we embrace this and understand that for us to survive and maintain our Africanness, we took a little bit of what they were pushing on us in order for us to be able to one day return back to where we should have been from the get-go. But until then, we did all of these things, and Voodoo is an authentic. The other piece that Professor Smalls talked about that we all have to really grasp is the concept of nature. Nature. The idea of a perfect macrocosm, a perfect cosmos, a cosmos that came into existence through spirit and matter, through that which could be seen and that which could not be seen. It was beautiful, and it was ordered and it was arranged, and how everything came into existence was ordered and arranged, from the cosmos straight down to the superclusters, to the clusters, galaxies, stars, and the planets that would all come from this singularity. And what we have done is the difference between intuition and instinct. Because amongst certain animal systems, they have instinct. They do what they're supposed to do because nature said, you're going to do it. But to the human being given the power of negation, because that's what we have. We have the power to say no to nature. But in saying no to nature, we become a free radical. We become a cancer. So when we are in sync with nature, we then have something that is intuition. And intuition is the cosmic gift. It is the spiritual gift to know that you're one with nature. So when Africans are able to perform within nature, you know, there's a commercial with Michael Jordan and Spike Lee. And Michael Jordan is doing all these phenomenal things on the basketball court. And Spike Lee says to Mike Jordan, he said, Mike, how you do that? And Michael Jordan shrugs his shoulder, like, I don't know. Well, to Africans, they would never shrug their shoulder. Because the performances of Michael Jordan, as it relates to athletics, or a Paul Robeson, or a Boukman, or a Dessalines, they know how they did it. And the grand unified theory, that theory that unites the outer world with the inner world, is that formula that is probably the most important concept, because that formula is the formula of nature. It unites nature. It unites the cosmos with the earth, with the human, with all things created by the Creator. And when you understand that formula then concretizes your ability to call on nature. Not because you're fighting it, not because you've overcome it, but because you have become nature. So who is to tell the law of nature what he or she can do when you are the law of nature? And so as spiritual beings, or as people who are encased in this body, we have got to come to an understanding that nature is the cornerstone. It is said that Europeans build parks in cities. Africans built cities in parks. In other words, they kept all the elements of nature, but they were able to become cosmopolitan and develop all the things that exist today. They didn't have to pollute the air or the water or the earth. They were one with nature, so they knew how to develop it in a way that it complemented nature, and nature was happy. HAPI.
Very good, Copper.
That's that's
A nod from the elder. That's very good. Good one.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. That's an honor.
Absolutely. So, Professor Small, if you could, you're going to be here in Sacramento with us next weekend.
Yes.
And you're going to be here for 2 days. We're going to be screening the film Happy. Great segue. Thank you, Professor Copper. We're going to be screening Happy the film and doing a networking event at the Guild Theater. And then the next day, we're going to be with, you're going to be with Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Wade Nobles, which is historic. I believe it's the first time you three will be in California together. I know you were, Professor Copper just talked about when you were in Detroit. And I think you guys, the three of you were in New York as well, but this is the first in California. So Californians, if you're listening, get on a plane, train, bus, skateboard, hoverboard, hovercraft, whatever you got to do. Get your butt here. Get your kids here and all of that, and just do a weekend thing. We're going to probably Sunday go wine tasting up in Shenandoah Valley. We're going to have a great time. But we're going to have the screening of the Happy film that you were a massive part of, that Brother Taki Grant produced. Then the next day, African Americans for Balanced Health is having you and Dr. Wade Nobles talk and do a lecture, workshop, seminar. It's going to be a full day event. It's going to be absolutely historical. And what you're going to be talking about, Professor Small, is African spirituality, which of course is one of your specialties and what you're so greatly known for. Speak to us about the film, maybe if you can connect the dots, because I'm sure you can. The spiritual connection between Happy, the Nile Valley, and the e-commerce, and Haiti, and how that Nile Valley River commerce system was able to fund and build one of the most powerful nations that defeated countless European nations that was trying to infiltrate it and destroy it.
Well, what we're talking about is what Dr. Kaba just spoke about, when people become one with nature. See, that's what made the Nile Valley civilization, Kemet, so extraordinary. That ecology, the harmony and the balance the people had. Imagine, you're in the desert, one of the hottest deserts in the world, and yet nature runs a river right through it. And then now you have to learn, how do I build a relationship with that river and make this desert flourish and provide the food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security that will allow a people to develop as a nation. And we managed to do it for thousands of years because the harmony, the balance that we discerned from nature was able to be projected right into the universe, right into the world. That's why that little piece about people and what they eat may seem so simple, but when you realize what you eat, all you do is eat the rest of nature. You take the substance from the rest of the elements, the animals, the fowl, the fish, the plants in nature, and you constantly replenish and restore yourself. That alone speaks to the balance. But when we think of what we have to face today, so we look at the river Happy back then and said, where is our Happy today? What is that stream that's bringing to us the sustenance that would allow us to build the communities we are in? And so we look at a place, let's just take a Harlem or a Bed-Stuy, right? What economics, the word economics come from the word echo, from ecology. So economics refers to the value and the wealth in your ecology. If you live in urban America, what is the value and wealth in your ecology? The first element would be the people themselves. The second would be the real estate. The third would be the retail business, and then the wholesale business. Now, what are the revenues? Where in the urban sector do you get the revenues to finance these enterprises? And there's two sources of revenue. Salary from the interrelationship between wholesale, retail, and the items that the people need as basic necessities. So the primary revenue comes back to a community, though, in the forms of tax revenue that comes back as earmarked money. Black folks have not learned how to market that money. They take billions of dollars from our community every year, but when it comes back to our community, everyone is learning how to use it through grants and other things and take advantage of it, except us. So that's a big piece of the revenue. That's the revenue flowing through our community. We have not been able to build a relationship with it. The other is our culture. Dr. Jeffries taught us that we must look at economics, politics, and culture as one package. All people sell their culture to themselves. If you drive through an Italian neighborhood, you know it's an Italian neighborhood because the furniture store is describing Italian furniture, the shoe store is describing Italian shoes, the suit stores are describing Italian-made suits, the grocery store is talking about Italian pasta and the different Italian dishes. So people are selling their culture to themselves and to others. So their culture become that part of that screen we call happy. But if you don't develop your culture, if you don't cultivate the elements of your culture, how can you sell it to yourself or anyone else? Because you've allowed other people to do that instead of you. And then real estate. If you don't control the real estate where you live, you can't determine what kind of retail or wholesale enterprise will be erected upon that real estate. So we're looking at all of these pieces as being a part of that stream that we call happy today, because there's no reason why we should not be able to harvest from the ecologies we are living in the urban environment in the same way we harvest from the ecology we lived in when we were in the rural environment. Except we have to recognize what the elements are and then learn how to utilize them.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Professor Cabo. Haiti and happy. Connect the dots for us in terms of the commerce necessary to defeat so many invasions. And connect the dots for us for that as it relates to this film that you were in with Professor Small, and then bring it back home to our modern day economy.
Well, what Professor Smalls was talking about in terms of connecting the word economy with ecology. Mm-hmm. Echo is, it comes to us, it says that is a Greek word. I'm going to leave that alone also, but I'm just going to say it for what it is. But it comes from oikos, which means oikos, oikos, which means home or environment. Mm-hmm. And so that would consider to be economy. It's not about money.
Right.
It's about utilizing your environment and your home to perfect it for it to reflect the order and arrangement of the cosmos. It should be like a mirror relationship.
Okay.
But at the same time, times have changed. An agricultural system was the very force of the economy of a people who were agricultural. The better you eat, the better you think, the better you think, the better you eat, and your civilization will rise through that. And many of the things that you do, many of the things that you develop, come directly out of the fact that out of agriculture, you're going to have things that are going to become tumuli, which are like sundials, which are going to perfect themselves into later pyramids. So many of the things that are going to be created technologically are going to reflect the need to perfect your agriculture. However, agricultural system has been mechanized, and that's what became the Industrial Revolution. So the values and the things that we needed left the agricultural system and got into an industrial system. The industrial system is played out now, so now we're in a technological. So that we have got to adjust to that. So this is where the finances of our community become the happy of today. The river that brought forward the fruits and vegetables was our value system. Nature was our value system. But the value system that we have to have now goes back to a word I've heard Professor John Henry Clark use frequently, that I've heard Professor Smalls use frequently today, and that word is relationship. And when you deal with Dr. Edwin Nichols' axiology, you're dealing with relationships. And so the first relationship of happy that I think we have to conquer is the eternal happy river that flows through us. For us to view ourselves and understand that we are our own economy. We are our home. We are our temple. And when we get this temple together, the relationships we create with other temples, with other people, that one-to-one relationship that Edwin Nichols talks about, then creates the community economy. And then you'll have something to say to people. And so this is why, with due respect to everybody else out here, and I have respect for any religions, I'm not going to get into that.
Sure.
And political systems and everything else. But when Minister Louis Farrakhan came to Newark, he knew he was coming back or going back to Chicago with money in his pocket. When pastors go into their churches, they know they're coming out with money. The way in which our speakers, such as Professor Smalls and Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Wade Nobles, when we talk about economy, we ought to have a sense of surety that we're going to be able to do the things that we want to do. Because the hobby of today is finances, no matter how we look at it. And it is when we pool our resources, we pool our power. When we pool our power, then we have a say as to what's going to happen to us. And that way, you don't have to take a knee. All you got to do is hold on to your money and give it to someone that look like you.
Absolutely.
Then you can stand up and do that. With due respect to the knee, but we shouldn't be having to do that right now.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, and Professor Small, I know you have referenced this man's work many times. Professor